The origin of writing goes back to about 3500 BC when Sumerians used clay tokens to record specific amounts of livestock and commodities. It was a primitive form of bookkeeping. It is quite plausible that at the same time the need to calculate became more important. First, in accounting there is a need for addition and subtraction beyond our 10 fingers. Second, because commodities have different values, the value of one must be expressed in terms of the value of the other. To do that, multiplication and division are indispensable. Third, there is also a time aspect involved. Accounting made it possible to record claims and debt. Claims must be received and debt must be paid, and both within a certain period of time. Against this background, it seems like a good idea to test the arithmetic skills and time aspects of Phonal with a small ledger application which keeps track of invoices and payments in time. Most people find math less intuitive than language. That has a lot to do with the difference in the acquisition of language and arithmetic. Any normal child acquires its mother tongue without formal education. That is not the case for arithmetic. One needs formal education to master math. And even more, one needs a teacher who uses language to teach the math. In this regard, the positioning of math as an extension of language is more natural than the opposite, to make language an extension of math. The application uses 5 subjects. The first 2 belong to the core of the application. The next 3 define basic things. The main structure of this tutorial is as follows. The invoice types, sales, purchase, ledger sides, debit, credit, and terms of payments are defined. Then 2 core procedures are written. Procedure total payments calculates all payments made on an invoice. Procedure balance calculates the difference between the invoice amount and the total of the payments. The formal definitions of invoice and payment is given. The application is defined. The time aspect is enforced by executing a deadline expression. In this application, every invoice has a type which can be sales or purchase. If it's sales, money should come in. If it's purchase, money should go out. When all sales and purchase invoices are paid, the difference between sales and purchases is what is earned. Debit and credit are entries to record changes in value resulting from business transactions. If a sales invoice is issued, the amount is booked at the debit side. If a payment is received, that amount will be booked at the credit side. When a purchase invoice is issued, it's just the other way around. When credit equals debit, the transaction is balanced. Terms of payments have a direct association with exposed VPs. In an exposed VP there is no time delay. Given the utterance, an invoice has exposed one payment. The moment an invoice is entered in the system, it will be regarded as a violation of the exposed VP despite the fact that the payment term may not have expired yet. So somehow the delay aspect has to be brought into the exposed VPs. There are 3 states for an invoice. It is paid, pending, or the payment is overdue. The difference between pending and overdue depends on the terms of payment, top. If the top specifies that payment should be made within a month, then there are 3 possibilities. It is paid. Payment received within a month. It is pending. Payment not received but the month is not finished yet. It is overdue. Payment not received and the month is finished. We define 3 terms of payment. The first one is a payment term of 14 days, the second 30 days, and the last is for cash payments without delay. Note that the unit's dimension is in dollar. The payment must be in dollar. Now that debit and credit have been defined, we can write two core procedures. The first one calculates the total of the payments received on the invoice. The second checks if the invoice amount equals the payment amount. Line 2. All debit payments of the invoice are collected. The phrase in dollars signals that we don't want the symbol set but the sum of their quantities. Line 3. All credit payments of the invoice are collected. Line 5. For a sales invoice, return the debit amount minus the credit amount. Line 6. For a purchase invoice, it is just the other way around. The next step is to write a procedure that keeps track of the balance of the amount of the invoice and the amount paid. Line 2. The amount of the invoice in dollar. Line 3. Total payments on the invoice. Line 4. Return true if balanced. A third procedure is defined to put the individual totals in the columns for sales and purchases. The syntax of the invoice has the usual ex-ante attributes: an identifier, the invoice type, sales, purchase, the date of issue, the terms of payments, and the quantity. Line 7. It is enforced that the quantity of the invoice, the amount, is expressed in the units dimension of the terms of payments on line 6. In this case, the unit is dollar. During parsing, other currencies will not be accepted. Line 8. The DP contains the call invoice balance. When the invoice amount balances the payment amounts, it returns true, and the exposed state is accepted. The attributes of a payment are an identifier, the invoice for which the payment is made, the date when the payment is received, the quantity of the payment, and the ledger side. Line 6. The quantity is checked for its dimension. The dimension is obtained by taking a walk from that invoice to the terms of payments to the unit's dimension. Now that all syntax has been defined, the components of the application can be defined too. Start the app. To ensure that the first two components are filled without invoices, we first add some dates. The third component shows the attributes of the invoices and their state. Parse the invoice and select the proper year and month. The invoice has a red cross. Right-click the invoice. We'll say, must have a payment. To fulfill this condition, we have to add payments. The red cross is still there because the total payments does not match the invoice amount. And only when the total payments match the invoice amount, the exposed VP is flagged as fulfilled. Suppose a next payment is made to the invoice. The customer pays $60 instead of the remaining $50. The exposed VP is still not fulfilled because the customer paid too much. We have to pay back $10. Select the months January through May. Now that we handled the issue of total payment, we will focus on the time aspect. Let's first fix the current time to the moment of writing. To monitor the terms of payment in time, a deadline expression can be defined. Its attributes are the subject and application to be monitored and an expression that defines when an instance of that subject is overdue. Line 2. Retrieve the terms of payments of the invoice in days. Line 3. And add it to the date of the invoice in days. The deadline expression compares the result of the addition with the current date like this. If the expression evaluates to true, the deadline expression returns pending and an hourglass is shown. In the other case, it returns to due and the invoice gets a red cross because it is overdue. Parse the next invoice. The invoice has an hourglass indicating that the payment term has not yet expired. When time goes by and invoices are not paid, payment terms expire. Usually a timer is employed that checks at midnight the state of the invoices. In this case, the check can be done by calling this simple custom procedure. When placed in a timer, the procedure collects all running applications with a deadline expression. For each application, it refreshes the data. This can be illustrated without timer. First, set the current date beyond the payment term to simulate the passing of time. And execute the timer task manually. Move the date back 2 weeks to reset the invoice status at the time of writing. Finally, reset the date to the current date. Parse the next lines to generate and show the input dialogues. The payment dialog can be activated as standalone as in the following request or can be activated by right-clicking the invoice for which a payment has been received. Simple makeup.